What's up, friends? Welcome back to a new episode of How Do I Beat This? Today we're going to be dealing with Cyclone, Hellion, Mine Mech. Let me actually read the email as always. This game was actually my memory as going against a Terran that has a very mobile Cyclone army backed by lots of Widow Mines that prevent counterattacks. When I watched the replay today, I see I made a tons of mistakes and maybe it wasn't so hard, but still, it is kind of an open question for me how to best tackle this. The basic problem for me is very mobile and can retreat while picking off valuable units. I think I had a stronger army for a long time, but I couldn't leave my bases without defense because he could hit me very fast and still be back to defend his own. Alright, well, we get the grasp of the email. Basically, help Hellion Cyclone or Hellion Mine Cyclone is too quick. I can't ever seem to fight. Difficult to catch army. How do I deal with this? That's a good question, and we're gonna figure out exactly what went wrong here. But let's start with the start, as always. I kind of missed what kind of MMR Mr. Cyblade was, but I have a feeling we might be able to catch a couple of mistakes in the early game as well. Now, initial mistake here is the lack of gas. Once again, I stress this every single time, is try to get a build order that you're familiar with, that you know how to do. Gas is supposed to go down at 17 in every single build order. 17 supply. If you're not aware on how to read build orders and you open up like some written build order and you see a bunch of numbers, the numbers, they equal the amount of supply you have at that time. Yeah, this gas is way too late. Next before a simulator is not actually good. We used to play this back in the day, a long time ago. At the very start of Legacy, then we realized it's just better to get a faster simulator. The slightly quicker Nexus doesn't actually help at all. So now that we got that out of the world, let's this is not a great build order. Should probably open with an Adapt into Warp Gate, I guess. Scout is very, very late as well. Wouldn't actually be able to scout anything of importance anymore at this point. Like, if he was getting proxied, he most likely would have lost as well. So, yeah. Not the greatest scout timing. Does delay his opponent from using his Reaper, I guess, because he's busy trying to defend this little probe harass. Should be able to kill this, actually, if he micros this well. Yeah, there we go. Good job. Sadly, while you were killing a single SCV, you completely forgot to build probes. You didn't build a second unit, forgot to start Warp Gate. Second gate. This is not really how you can play TVP, honestly, or PVT. Like, sometimes you'll see people do a 3-gate pressure, but in that case you need a fast Warp Gate. So I'd really suggest that you watch either some kind of guide or you get a build order from a professional game where you just practice that build order and get familiar with that build order, because this makes no sense. It's not good. And it's gonna cost you a lot of games because you're just kind of freestyling. Now, I have no problem with people freestyling if that's the part of StarCraft they enjoy the most, but then don't be surprised if you lose a lot more than you probably should, because what you're playing right now is just a very poor build order, honestly. Like, the unit production is very little, you're building the wrong units, double Adapt into double Sentry into Twilight. It's kind of nonsensical, because Twilight usually goes either into Blink or Charge, most likely Blink, so you want a higher Stalker count earlier on to deal with stuff. You haven't chrono boosted on Nexi yet either, which is very, very important to do. Extra Nexi, I'm not a fan of ever chrono boosting Warp Gate in PvT, honestly. I think it's kind of a waste, but I guess if you have as much energy as you do, it's better to use it than not to use it. Now, this is one of the reasons as well why your whole army should be in your natural. Just in case someone, comes there with a Cyclone, you can actually do something about it. I mean, your army is there naturally already. Try to... I mean, all of this is just macro, so like a slightly poor macro, but once again, really try to have a build order, a plan here. Majority of the time, how you want to be playing in PvT is kind of like, alright, you open up on... You get a natural base, then you get 3 gates and a certain kind of tech, so whether that's 3-gate Stargate or that's 3-gate Blink. With 3-gate Blink you get a Robo, and then after that you expand. So your expand should almost always go down before 5 minutes. Like, it should always go down before 5 minutes, unless you're getting absolutely all in. Getting a 4th gate and maybe even a 5th gate before you expand automatically puts you in a very all-in position, or a very all-in, in a more all-in position, which you wouldn't really want. Now, you're building blind batteries. You're doing this because I assume you die a lot otherwise. The reason you die is because you don't scout at all. You have no map vision. Your hallucinations are quite late. Nothing is covering your tower. Like, you're really as blind as a bat, which is something you can work on by either getting observers or using your hallucinations a little bit quicker. Now you figure out that he has a couple of cyclones in the middle of the map, and you opted to go for charge, which I'm already not a massive fan of charge. I think blink usually is better. Now this scout is important. As you see, a couple of factories. I'm gonna actually I'll link one of the blink builders, which I think is quite cool and has good scouting, in the description, and I might make a little thing up here for somewhere to click if any of you guys are, well, it keeps telling me to use a build order, but I don't know which one. Well, I'll have a good PvT build order up there that I made myself, so God knows it's absolutely perfect. Just try to follow that, practice that kind of stuff against the AI first before taking it to the ladder, because if you put something in a stressful situation like the ladder, usually you're going to make more mistakes, and it's very likely you're going to lose a couple of times with the build, which might make you lose trust in it, and that's the worst thing that can happen in StarCraft, is you lose confidence in what you're playing. So try it against the AI 3-4 times, get a feeling for the build, try to, get good at it, and then take it to the ladder afterwards, after you already thought about it as well, like, hey, how would I react if something like this happens, That's kind of how you set yourself up for a more successful game. In this case, a follow-up with a Robo Bay. Now, after scouting this many factories, I'm not a big fan of getting a very fast Robo Bay. Most of the time I prefer getting charged blink, but I can see it, especially against Cyclone Hellion. It's actually not that bad to get a Robo Bay. Now, the reason it's not that bad, there's 2 ways you can approach this, even from a Robo Bay. So you got the Disruptor way and you got the Colossi way. A lot of people find Disruptor very difficult to control. In that case, you can try the Colossus way. If you find Disruptors not that hard to control, I think Disruptor is slightly more stable, so I suggest the Disruptor way. Now, if you play Disruptors, the way you're going to be fighting against a Cyclone-based army is that you're not going to be attacking into it. You're going to be mainly using it as a defensive measure and to push him back a little bit. You just use the Disruptor shots to zone out areas while slowly moving forward. It's a slow and steady game. You need to be kind of on top of your army control. Now, the other option is Blink Stalker Colossi. Blink Stalker Colossi is really good because Colossi, they initially outrange the Cyclone. So in order for the Cyclone to lock onto your Colossi, they need to get in Colossi range, in which you make a big swipe and you do a lot of damage. However, after you get locked on, Cyclones can actually outrange your Colossi. And there's a quick trick for this. If you have a War Prism following your army, in that case you can just pick up the Colossi to cancel the Cyclone, to cancel the Cyclone lock on, and your Colossus can go back to shooting. This is the way you want to be fighting. Now that sounds a little bit difficult, I know, but I'm gonna show you guys at the end of this. I'm gonna show you a quick trick on how to make sure that a prism is following your army at all times, and perhaps some other tricks with the prism at the end of this replay as well. I hope I don't forget that. Now, once again, you really want to be getting a 3rd base faster. Like I said, 3 gates usually is the timing you want to get a 3rd base. Right now you're on 5 gates. You have a bunch of cannons already. It's 8 minutes in the game. It's just slightly too late. You want to get a better economy, really. On top of that, we also want to have some more vision. So send a Zealot to that watchtower. Build a pylon in this area. Send a probe over here. People say, but then I lose 50 minerals. And they'll say this while floating 900 minerals. It's like, if you're a lower level player, losing 50 minerals is not going to lose you the game. What's going to lose you the game is not spotting your opponent's move out. Not knowing what your opponent's army composition is. That kind of stuff is what's going to lose you the game. Now, if you're playing a Colossi style against mech as well, I'd like to tell you that you should not be building charge lots, because charge lots are going to charge into your opponent, while if you're playing Colossi Stalker, you want to be fighting from a distance and kind of kite your opponent. Now, this is what I was talking about. Imagine you had vision here. You would be able to see this coming a mile away, basically, and you would be able to be in position on top of this ramp. Instead of that, right now, you're... Well, first of all, you're going to be charging into a lot of mines, which isn't ideal. You do have Colossi range, which is good, and you're actually fighting quite well. So, even though you lost your third base and you didn't cancel, this fight altogether wasn't all too poor. Once again, I'm not a fan of the extra charge lot. They did kind of nothing. Whenever you know your opponent is building a lot of mines, always keep an observer with your army. Now, an easy way to do this, if you're... A lot of the time you can lose observers, right? They fly in front of your army, they fly over ridges, and then they're at the opponent's army too fast or stuff like that. What you can do is you have one observer just right-clicked on one of your colossi, and one of the observers is in your army control group. So one observer is kind of in the front and one is just in the back. In case you lose the first one, hey, you still have a second one hanging in the back behind your colossi. That's the kind of trick that could, you know, win you the game in case there's a lot of mines somewhere on the map. Now, once again, like I said, always establish some kind of line of vision. This doesn't need to be like if I would think of a line of vision, I'm thinking, okay, pylon here for drops, maybe pylon here, zealot over here, maybe a zealot here, and then observer to cover this area. So I have like 6-7 units. That's not necessary a lot of the time, especially if you're playing at a slightly lower level. The main important things are just going to be grab the watchtowers, free vision of the majority of space in front of your natural. Put a unit over here, like this is, or even over here, like this. You get a 5-second extra warning for stuff moving up your third base. Like, this is the kind of stuff that helps. Like, even this observer, like, I kind of like, honestly. Like, it's a small warning, but it's 3-4 seconds extra that are, well, I mean, they're gonna help, right? It's different. Like, if he already would have been locked on before you start moving, you still need to respond as well. So, yeah, this is cool. I really do like this. Now, I'm not a massive fan of the storm here. Usually you either get storm or colossi, not both in this case. So be a little bit careful with not over-tacking too much. Like, you're getting a more complicated army every single time. Also lost all the, what you call it? All of your observers again. So these mines, now that they have the drilling claws, won't even be visible anymore, which really sucks. And it also kind of shows why I really like if you imagine getting 3 colossi and the rest of your army is stalkers here against a complete Cyclone mine army, that's completely fine. Like, immortals have less range, so they're going to be locked on quicker, but the colossi almost always survive. Blink stalkers are pretty good at surviving as well, and they do a lot of initial damage to both cyclones and mines as well, which is nice. Like, they're kind of like immortals, except stalkers have blink, so you can chase easier, you can run back easier, you have a little bit more mobility. You could blink these bad boys back if you want to. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the Stalker Colossi, especially at the lower level. Now, another thing I've been noticing you haven't really been doing too well is the constant pro production. I mean, it's 12-13 minutes in game. We're at 13 workers at this point, which is... we're at 51 workers at 13 minutes in game, which is a little bit too low. Like, you need better worker production, basically, is what you need. You need to really remind yourself, hey, I need to build workers. It's one of the main pillars in StarCraft 2, in combination with kind of, you know, having good macro. Those are the main mechanics, obviously, like worker production, pylon production, and then unit production are extremely important. Like, just with that you can probably get the high masters if you do that properly. I think it shows in my beating Grandmaster with Stupid Stuff series that maybe you can even get higher with just good mechanics. Like, you don't necessarily need to have good strategy, you just need to be very fast. It's something that you do need to keep in mind. So keep building that. Now, We do see 3 forges, not a big fan of that. Very expensive. 2 forges is fine, never get more than 2 really. 3rd forge adds very little. It's kind of expensive, takes a lot of your gas. I do like your army composition a little more this time around, as you do have the 3 colossi. And you see the initial swipes are so big right now with those colossi that you're just doing so much damage before he even gets the lock on. He just keeps losing cyclone after cyclone. And if you weren't down 60 supply, I'd actually kind of like your position in this game. Once again, no observer to clean this up is painful. I'm not sure what these guys are doing. He's having a blast. Because you can't really chase through these mines because you don't know if they're ready or not. And this is kind of painful to watch. Like these mines are doing slightly too much damage, which sucks. Really does suck. Another thing you might want to try is that whenever one of your bases gets saturated, is just to grab a new base. If you're at the lower level, it's like a good queue basically, because a lot of people are like, I don't know when to take a 3rd, I don't know when to take a natural. In that case, if you're not sure about these things and all your games look really weird, just whenever you saturate one of the bases, just go on to the next one and keep doing this until you have like 80 probes. Usually there is a little pylon in the top showing your supply if you're playing a game. If you hover over that, it shows how many workers you have. So basically go up to 80 probes and then keep doing the trick where whenever you saturate a base, just take a new one. It's a good little cue. Give yourself some mental cues on when to do stuff. I remember when I started playing, whenever I would hit 105 supply, I'd get a forge, which obviously is not like a good thing to do, but it really got me used to getting a forge and consistently getting upgrades. And I was like, okay, I got 105 supply, build the forge, start getting upgrades. If you don't have a lot of knowledge about the game, or, well, not a lot, but if you're not quite sure when to build forges usually, or when to do what, just give yourself rules that, even if they don't make sense, they will help you improve overall. Like, as a general rule, they're probably okay. So 105 is a random number, of course. You could do it at 80 supply. Always build a forge at 80 supply and never stop building them. Whenever you saturate a base, you take the next one. Just stuff like that can be extremely helpful to improving your game. Because then you don't need to do the thinking as much anymore. Like, hey, do I want to build a forge? Do I want to build a Templar Archives here? Like, what is my plan really? This is one of the main things that just having a plan helps so much, because it kind of removes the thinking during the game, which is what a lot of people spend so much time on. There's like, hey, like what actually should I be doing right now? Like, that's not, during a game you don't really want to be thinking at all. You just want to be going through the motions of playing basically, and then perhaps if you encounter a new situation you want to think, but most of the thinking should have been done before the game or in replay watching, that kind of stuff. Which is why a lot of the time for lower levels I'd suggest just kind of sticking to one unit composition as well for majority of the games. Even if that unit composition isn't necessarily the best composition, it's still gonna be it's gonna do fine if you just macro well enough. You know, Charge of Archon Immortal is gonna do fine if you just have 50 more supply than your opponent every single time. Now, this is a good run by. It's something that I haven't really focused on yet in this game, is the run bys that you could be doing, or the potential damage, as mainly you've just been busy defending. Now, you mentioned specifically in the email as well that you had trouble getting run bys in. If you have trouble getting run bys in, get a Dark Shrine. You'll see how much easier it is. And try to not get a Dark Shrine too early, as it's kind of costly, but for example, another cool rule would be whenever you take the gases on your 3rd base against Terran, you build a Dark Shrine, you know? This is just a rule you could make to yourself, and in that case, you don't really have an excuse not to do run-bys anymore. And something you can do is just warp in 3 DTs, send 1 DT into the main, 1 DT into the natural, and 1 DT into the 3rd. You don't even have to look at it at that point anymore, and you'll see how many games that's gonna win you. Just small things like that. And if you just create a big rule set for yourself where it kind of takes away the thinking during the game, that could be really helpful already. For another cool rule, for example, could be that whenever your you take the gases on your natural is that you basically check your minimap and then be like, all right, where do I need vision to see his attacks? Because that's usually the timing where attacks should start coming. So then you take the tower, you put that zealot here, and you just build a lot of mental cues and kind of get into a mental routine of doing things. And over time, you can improve that, of course. If you think, well, right now I build a forge whenever I have 60 probes or whenever I have 120 supply, and after a while maybe you can refine that for a matchup. Same with a unit composition. If you always want to play Blink Stalker Colossus and you realize it loses to maybe mass carriers, and you can be like, all right, I'll change that, but try to not change too much during the game. Like the thinking during the game should be basically kept to a minimum. The thinking should be done after, while watching the replay, or while just thinking about the game. Not sure how much time you have on your hands, but I do tend to think a bit about the game. Doesn't always pay off, as I'm still at the same level as I was 5 years ago, but can't win them all, boys. So we have I mean, you're very far behind at this point, right? There's a big Cyclone ball, basically. There's 26, there's a couple of battle cruiser which you really aren't prepared for. It's just gonna be rough for you. Like you're down in everything, basically. Down in workers, down in upgrades. Even though you have 3 forges, I think you only used a single forge so far in this game. Another thing, by the way, I can suggest is actually grouping all your forges on one hotkey, or even all your upgrade facilities. So your Twilight Council, your Templar Archives, your Robo Bay, and the forges. Just put them on a hotkey. Doesn't have to be close by. It could be like your 8 hotkey or 9 hotkey. You're not going to press it a lot, and you don't have to add a lot of units there. And just check on it every now and again, which is cool to do. Another cool trick, which I got taught a long time ago, is that if you really struggle with a certain action, or you really struggle with, for example, if you notice that you're never really looking at the minimap, even if you do have vision, something you can do is, for example, set a metronome for 5 seconds. So I guess that would be, if I can count, 12 beats per minute. Yeah, that's math is difficult. And then basically every time you hear the tick, your eyes just go over to the minimap, just something like that. Like working with a metronome can be very useful, and you can set different sounds for different things as well if you want. It's kind of it's a little bit of cheating, but it's in, if you're practicing, then that's fine. Don't do this in tournaments, but you could have like I don't know, every 35 seconds or every minute you could have the sound of a chicken screaming to check your upgrades, something like that, and you can have a couple of different sounds just to help you improve your mental cycle of things to do. It's like just continue to build probes, like every 10 seconds or so, like you hear the Wilhelm scream, or Arnold Schwarzenegger is saying, "I'll be back." Like that should get you to build probes. There's a lot of tricks which can help you in that way. Same with map vision, like every 2 minutes check if you have map vision. You can have me saying that as a sound clip. I'm not sure how difficult that is to set up, but I doubt it's very difficult with the nowadays technology. Like I don't use this very much anymore, but I have used it in the past. I had a chicken sound play every 30 seconds. I can't remember for what. I just remember I had a chicken sound every 30 seconds. Like a year and a half ago or something. But yeah. That's I'm not sure why I did that. The problem here really wasn't so much your army composition as almost always being out of position, not really being able to get any damage onto your opponent, not really having any scouting, your economy being a lot worse. Your fights actually I think were kind of okay. Yeah, you fought relatively well. You could have had a couple more observers with your army, but your army in general was quite okay. So yeah, if you're struggling with the run-bys and you're somewhere around platinum, lower diamond, and I never know how to do the run-bys. It's difficult. Just try the Dark Shrine. See if Dark Templars help with that, and then A lot of the time when you have better map vision, run-bys also become easier, right? If you know where your opponent's army is, it's easier to send 5 zealots. You don't even necessarily need to look at them. Like, you just send them somewhere and they'll do the work for themselves. Like, zealots are very self-sustaining like that. Like, these guys, you know, you can leave them alone to do a job. Like, they'll ravage a mineral line. Sometimes I had this many times where you A-move 5 zealots, so they come from here, and then you A-move them, and the drones are working on the right side, and they only see this extractor. And you're like, oh man, he didn't respond to my 5 zealots at all for like a minute, and then you look back and the hatchery has 700 less HP and the extractor died. This is a common occurrence. So don't be that guy, but don't pay too much attention to the run-bys either. I mean, like, we're not Terrans, we're not tryhards. Like, we just kind of do stuff and hopefully win games. All right. I think we kind of fleshed out this scenario. So against Hellion Cyclone, as I said, you really have a couple of options. You can in theory also play Charged Archon Immortal with Storm, and then storm the Cyclones like as a zoning tool. Disruptors as a zoning tool works similar, but if you're not sure how, like, if you feel like that's too difficult for you, just play Stalker Colossus basically, and just kind of kite your opponent back and forth. You can have a prism with it. I'm gonna show some of the prism tricks right now, so let's get into that. Alright friends, I want to show you guys some things. I want to show you guys some things with that prism. So let's head into it. First of all, first trick is there is the move command button. This one. You use it when you do this. Now, people always ask me, how do you make your prism follow your main army? Because if you just click on it, picks it up. That's annoying, right? Correct. What you do is you use the hotkey for move, which in my case is M. Then you use left click on your unit. And look at that. It's following it, and it's behind. Always use this in one of your back units, so your prism is never in front. You can't lose it. Now, I like to have my prism on a hotkey. So imagine you're getting locked on by, well, let's say, by one of these. Hey, why aren't you locking on? Oh, I'm dying. Whoop. Just like that. See? Helps. And in that case, it's really easy to play against Hellion, or to play against a Cyclone, Hellion Cyclone, or Mine Cyclone. Now that we're here with the prism, I might as well show you guys a few other tricks. If you're wondering how you do the moving drop like this, hey. The way to do that is to, well, have all your units in the war prism, unload all button. Don't click it on the ground, but just click it on your prism like this. Whoop. And you'll just drop off as fast as possible. Now, another trick, which is maybe a little more advanced, but you see this prism, the move speed when it picks up units. So imagine you're trying to pick up a unit. Is you go to the unit, then you pick it up, right? Even if you shift Q them up, like every single time you lose acceleration. Now, what you can do instead of that is you can move your prism over it, then click your stalkers into it, and it won't stop moving. So if you click your stalkers into it, that's fine. This is the same thing with if you are going from phase mode into transport mode, and you're clicking a unit through that, first the animation of going from phase mode to transport mode needs to finish before you can pick up units. So that's like a second and a half. Sometimes that can lose you something. Now, instead of, if you are in this mode and then go into transport mode and you just click in with the stalker instead of from the prism side, you get picked up immediately. So that's a couple of tricks that you have there. So always try to click from the unit side into the prism if you can. Use unload all on top of your prism to drop. It's the easiest way. You can do it while moving. Keep your prism more safe. And these are all the prism tricks I really have. I don't think there's much more honestly to discuss. Now, if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, or I'm going to be very angry. Also leave a thumbs up, as that really does help me a lot. I know I say this every video, but it actually helps me a lot. I see a noticeable difference in how many people watch my videos and how much money I get paid at the end of the day, which is It's the most important thing. I love you all. Thank you very much for watching. Also, I have a second channel. I'll leave it in the description down below. Please subscribe to that as well if you have nothing else to do in your life, and no one has anything to do in their life because we're all stuck inside. So yeah, bye-bye. See you all tomorrow, and enjoy your quarantine life. Bye-bye.